This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the all-in-one website platform to create a beautiful website for yourself, your brand, or your fans. The faster you paint, the sooner you can get to the table. But in the world of one-coat paints, there are some obvious winners and some obvious losers. So before you put paint on your next model or click confirm on that next order, let's talk about what paints are worth the money and which are not. Today, I'm testing every one-coat paint, including one you've probably never heard of that you might just love. But before we begin, let me know down in the comments which is your favorite one-coat paint. Let's start with Citadel Contrast from Games Workshop, the OG one-coat paint. With 61 different colors, Citadel Contrast Paints offers a wide range of highly saturated and vibrant options. And while it is the OG, it does have a lot of good and bad aspects. First, the consistency varies across the range, with some colors being thin like a wash, while others are highly pigmented and quite dark. Second, like all Citadel paints, contrast paints come in pots, which I don't have a great track record with. No! This is too f***ing expensive to just leave like this. And at $9 for 18 milliliters, these paints are also the most expensive, which makes spilling them even more painful. Compared to others on this list, they perform quite well on large areas, but they can be difficult to work with once they begin to dry, so either work with them immediately after you apply them, or let them dry the whole way. I also enjoy using these through my airbrush. The vibrant saturation makes them absolutely gorgeous, and the thin consistency means they don't require any thinning at all. Overall, I give them an A-. Gorgeous application, saturated colors, but inconsistent across the range, the most expensive, and the pots are annoying. Next, let's talk about Army Painter Speed Paints, which are the brand that I have the second most experience with. Speed Paint 2.0 has 90 colors, including an industry first of one-coat metallic paints. Army Painter Speed Paints are priced at $4.50 for one 18 milliliter bottle. The new formula addresses reactivation issues seen in Speed Paint 1, meaning you can paint over your previously applied speed paint coats with ease after they've fully dried. Army Painter paints are more consistent in pigmentation across the range, though there are a few exceptions. Here you can see how opaque the red is compared to the blue, which flows into the shadows nicely. These paints come in vibrant colors and don't show brush strokes. While the metallics are a cool idea, and they certainly do cover in a single coat, they do not flow into the recesses to create shadows as their other paints in the Speed line do. They are still very easy to work with and have a gorgeous finish, but if you were expecting them to work the same as the others in this line, you'll be disappointed. Overall, I give these an A. They are quite saturated, though not as saturated as contrast paints. They perform well on large surfaces, come in a huge range of colors, are less expensive, and are more consistent across the range. These aren't perfect, but they do almost everything quite well. Deciding between one-coat paints can be overwhelming, but you know what isn't? Designing a website with Squarespace. One thing I would love to do is host workshops in miniature painting across the country. And once I get there, and beforehand too, Squarespace has everything I need for a great custom website. I started with one of Squarespace's beautiful templates, then customized the look, content, and fit for my unique needs. With Squarespace's drag and drop technology with Fluid Engine, it was easy to create a custom website for desktop and mobile. Best of all, I can even sell custom merch and create a passive income stream that engages my fans and scales with my brand. When you're ready to start your website, head to squarespace.com for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/LylaMev to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Alright, back to painting. Next on the list are Scale 75's Instant Colors. Instant Colors offer a palette of 48 colors and have a very interesting range of colors. These paints come in 17ml dropper bottles and are $4.99 per bottle. The range includes pastels, which is something not seen in many other lines, but it also includes colors that look very similar, while skipping colors I would expect to see more of, mostly more purple. The big thing that makes this brand unique is their use of acrylic pigments rather than inks. This makes them less opaque and more unpredictable. Instant paints flow into the recesses very, very well, but that is part of what highlights your imperfections. Unfortunately, they are rather inconsistent across the range. The red went on the Space Marine just fine, but this blue is having a lot of problems. And while you can't see brush strokes, the paint is collecting oddly in our larger areas. Overall, I give these a C. I recommend skipping these. Dipping inks from Green Stuff World offer a cost-effective option with their large 60ml bottles. While the paints settle well, the opacity varies widely from color to color and overall are still pretty translucent. I'm actually confused as to why these are labeled as one-coat paints. I will admit that I only tested a small amount of colors, but the ones that I got are not cutting it. I give these a D. Xpress Colors from Vallejo are the newest addition to the one-coat paint category. They have a very limited range of only 23 colors, but the paints do boast a matte finish and are quite affordable, costing about $3 per 17ml bottle. Like many of the previous entries, these paints are based off inks, making them intense and vibrant. However, I found them to be just as blotchy and difficult to work with as the Instant Colors. That is until I thinned them down. Thinning them down in a 2-to-1 ratio of thinner medium to paint greatly reduced the uneven application and visible brushstrokes while simultaneously reducing opacity. I give these Xpress Colors a B-. Inconsistent saturation and opacity, patchiness and blotchiness in the application, and the requirement of needing to thin these paints just leaves them towards the bottom of my list. Lastly is Cuttlefish Colors. Cuttlefish Colors is different than the rest of the paints on this list. Unlike contrast paint, Cuttlefish Colors do not sink into the recesses to create shadows. Instead, the colors are basically pre-thin glazes that allow your base layer to show through. The range offers 112 colors in 2 varieties of opacity, sketch and glaze. Sketch colors are more opaque, though still pretty translucent, while the glaze paints are very translucent. What I really love using the Cuttlefish Colors for is painting over the other paints we talked about in this video. Due to their translucent nature, they blend into your previously applied colors perfectly, meaning there isn't an obvious difference between what areas I painted with contrast paint and what areas I went over with normal acrylic. Since acrylic paints are usually so opaque, the line between where contrast ends and traditional acrylics begins is usually pretty stark. These paints should be thinned down at least a little bit with their Merlin's Magic Medium to achieve a smooth application. Otherwise, they tend to build up and leave brushstrokes, which can be annoying. If you're ever having trouble with your Cuttlefish Colors, shake the bottle vigorously. The pigments and the medium separate a lot more than normal paints, so shake them vigorously before you begin. Overall, I give them a B. They had a very high learning curve, but if what you want is to take a step beyond contrast paints, want to apply pure color to a slab chop or zenithal model, or maybe looking for pre-thin glazes, then these paints are great for you. So where does that leave us? My final answer actually came as a bit of surprise. My favorite is the Army Painter Speed Paints 2.0. I honestly was expecting it to be contrast paint, since that's the paint that I have used the most. But after testing more contrast paints and finding that the colors were just all over the place in terms of opacity, plus having far more colors and basically all the other good qualities of the Citadel contrast paints, makes Army Painter my favorite. The rest of the rankings go as follow. Army Painter, contrast paints, our bonus paint of Cuttlefish Colors, Xpress paints, instant paints, then dipping inks. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you agree or disagree? You know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe. Go join me on Patreon. Thanks so much. I'll see you next time.